They say that Jesus and St. Peter like to go visiting folks. They leave their village and wander out, talking, chatting, just enjoying the people. And then they get to about a certain time of day and they turn around and they come home just before nightfall. Except one time they got a little far out and they weren't paying much attention to the time of day, and then they realized there was no way they were going to make it back before nightfall. And Peter says, what are we going to do about this? Jesus says, don't worry, we'll just ask around and find someone who'll put us up for a night. So they walked up to a door and they knocked, and a woman opened it, and Jesus said, hello ma'am, my friend and I, we got a little far away from our village and it doesn't look like we'll make it back in time for nightfall. And we were wondering if you could put us up. And the woman looked down at her kids and shoved them back. She said, don't you see I got things going on here? I can't be putting up strangers. You go across the street over there, that woman, she'll put you up. And she slammed the door. And Peter says, what are you going to do? Are you going to bring down some kind of judgment on her? And Jesus says, no. They walked across the street and they knocked on that other door. And the woman opened it, and she had little kids around her too, and she just pulled them up in close so they could see what was going on. And Jesus said, ma'am, my friend and I, we were out wandering. We got a little far from home and won't be able to make it back by nightfall. We were wondering if you could put us up for the night. And she said, oh, don't think about it twice. And she pulled them and brought them in, and she sat them down. The kids climbed all over the two of them while she went about making something to eat. And she gave them that something to eat. She gave them a nice little spot with a straw bed. And the next morning when they woke up, she had already packed them up a little something for that day. And St. Peter said, whoa, this woman was much different from that other woman. What are you going to do for her? And Jesus says, I think I'll give her a little blessing. So as they were getting ready to leave, he said, ma'am, I got to tell you what. You can ask of me anything, and I will give it to you. And she says, oh, I don't want anything. She says, I just want to be hospitable. I'll tell you what I will ask. If you just help me keep focused during my day so things don't interrupt just for one day, I would love that blessing. And Jesus says, well, I'll tell you what. Whatever it is you begin in the morning, you'll do all day long. And she said, thank you. And they turned and left. Well, as soon as they were gone, she looked around. The kids were all taken care of. So she went over and she sat down at her spinning wheel and she began to spin. And it seemed like the day flew. And when she was all done, she had spun out so much thread that she was able the next day to begin to weave, and she made so much cloth. She was able to take that cloth down to the market and she sold it, and she got so much money that she and the children lived comfortably for a goodly long time. Remember that other woman across the street? She heard about this. And she went over to her one day and she said, how did all this happen? She says, well, I just got a little blessing from the two strangers that came by. And that mean old woman says, well, next time they come by, you have them come to my place. Well, as it was, one time Jesus and Peter went out walking in that same direction, and they got a little far from home and got to be too late to get home by nightfall. And Peter says, what are we going to do about this? And Jesus says, we'll just see if someone can put us up. And Peter says, we should try that woman that had us up the first time. So they went back, and the woman opened the door and her kids came up. And Jesus says, excuse me, ma'am, my friend and I, you might remember we got too far away one time. We're hoping this time you might be able to put us up a second time. And she said, oh, you know I would. I'd do it just as fast as I could. But you know what, I got to tell you what, the woman across the way, she really wants to put you up for the night. She says, she made me promise to have you go over there. And Jesus says, all right, well, thank you. She closed the door, and Peter said, we're not really going over there, are we? Jesus said, let's see what goes on. So they walked back across the road, and sure enough, that door opened up. And that woman, that mean old woman with the kids, she grabbed him and she pushed him back. She said, go get started working. She grabbed Jesus and Peter and she pulled them on into the house without even letting them ask a word. And she pushed them down, and the kids wanted to go play with them because they heard that they were pretty good people. But she said, no, you go get some water and you go get some firewood. We got work to do. And she put together a meal that, man, it wasn't that good. But she threw it on the table. And then she told Jesus and Peter right away, there's your bed. I'll see you in the morning. Well, the next morning they got up, and sure enough, she had packed them an old piece of bread. And she said, here's for their journey. And they said, well, thank you. And she said, where's my blessing? And Peter looked at Jesus. And Jesus looked at Peter. And Peter said, you're not going to give her the same thing, are you? And Jesus said, we'll see what happens. And he turned to the woman and he says, you know what? Your hospitality's been good. So I'm going to give you exactly what I gave that other woman. The blessing Whatever you begin in the morning, you'll do all day long. And the two of them walked out. And as soon as she slammed the door, she looked over at her spinning wheel and she's thinking, I'm going to spin so much, I don't want anything to interrupt me. So, before I do anything else, I'm going to the outhouse. And sure enough, what she began in the morning, she did all day long. And that is my story.